Hey there friends, David Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thank you for being here. And this is a missing person segment. Thus we will talk about missing people. Now, I've noticed that just lately we've had a lot of people commenting that appear to be new to missing 411. And that's great, I appreciate that. But not every missing person case we talk about in my books are from national parks, Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forests. Some actually happen in an urban setting. And we've talked about many of those over the years, and I've made many videos about these. But I think sometimes they take a back seat to what's happening in the woods. But it's happening right under our noses at times. And just like the young, healthy student that disappears in a city setting and is later found in the water. Just like that. Now, the case I'm going to talk to you about today, super unusual. And I mean really unusual. It involves a man. I've never heard this story before. I'm sure you've never heard of it before, but I'm sure it's going to be plastered all over the internet after this because people like to take my stories and take credit for them. John Warren, 69 years old, went missing August 7th, 1983 in Toms River, New Jersey. And he was a college professor teaching engineering at Ocean City College, where he had taught there for 16 years. Where is that? Well, if you're an East Coaster, I understand that you know exactly where it is. So here is the Atlantic Ocean. Here's Anchorage, New Jersey, Brick Township, Village Pine Park, Toms River. Toms River is the closest major city to this, where we're talking about. And Toms River Police is the organization that did the investigation into John's disappearance. This is Huck outside trying to monopolize my time. She said she was too busy to come in. Too many engagements. Got sick of watching me. Okay, fine. Now, prior to teaching, John wasn't your normal guy. No, he had several employees that he had worked for in the previous 30 years where he did government-related projects. And he designed technology that was actually used in military weaponry, analog systems for simulations, and he was a chief engineer, all related to rocket type science. Yes, he was very smart. But that wasn't really John's main thing he was known for. Everyone knew he was brilliant, but everybody really liked John. He was very compassionate, interested in you, had a real positive outlook on life. He'd been married 47 years to Estelle. This is a picture of he and Estelle. Now, he'd been a runner and kept himself in outstanding shape for a number of years, and then he slowly developed arthritis. It got so bad that he couldn't stand up for the lectures at the university anymore. And he actually was forced to retire in June of 1983, just a couple months before he disappeared. Now, Estelle, his wife, said that John was a man of extreme routine about all parts of his life. Every morning he'd wake up, he'd have breakfast, and then he'd take an hour-long walk through his neighborhood, through the school. The college was just a couple blocks away. And that was his way to stay in shape after he was older. And he started to have arthritis. Now here's a picture of just John. A very dapper man, I would say. And the thing that impressed me extremely when I was reading this was his kindness and his persistence to make you important in his life. And you know, that's probably what all of us would wish others thought of us, that we cared about them, that we were kind, that we looked them in the eye when they were talking to us. We didn't look at our phone. We didn't look at our watch. And right away, John Warren impressed me a lot because there were a lot of witness statements, a lot of police statements. I'll keep going. August 7th, 1983, the day he disappeared, John and Estelle had plans at 10 a.m. that day to attend a friend's pool party. And John knew of it. At 8:45, he left for his normal walk after having breakfast. Estelle said everything was absolutely normal. John left, knew to be back about 9:45 or 9:50. He walked out the door just like he normally did, and Estelle went down to their basement to do the laundry. And they lived at 62 Yorkshire Drive in Toms River, New Jersey. You can look up the address. This was a very nice neighborhood. At 9:15 a.m., John spoke to a campus security guard on the campus where he used to teach. He only lived a couple blocks away. And this was on College Drive. At 9:50 a.m., he spoke to a jogger on Brokaw Road. Now, this was all subsequent investigation that found these people. At 10 a.m., John didn't arrive home. At 10:30, Estelle walked the neighborhood looking for John. At 11 a.m., she called the police department. Now, let's go over this real carefully. This is where John and Estelle lived, right here. And right here is where he taught, just through a small field. He could cut through there if he wanted. So he cut through, walked around. At 9:15, he spoke to a security guard right here. Then it appears that he probably walked down along the drive, and at 9:50, he spoke to a jogger. And again, his residence is right there. So he was set up to come back, and he was close. There's some wooded area here, some wooded area here at the time, and there was a large water pond right here. Again, pretty established neighborhood, some wooded areas. Well, police are called, and they arrive, and they do what police do. They interview the family, interviewed his sons. He had 2. Interviews Estelle. They take a report, and they had a couple of officers just drive the streets in the neighborhood. Why? Looking to see if John just collapsed on a sidewalk and no one has found him, etc. You do those kind of things. And then they started to make some calls. When you have John's house right here, and you have the campus right here, the first call I would have made would have been to campus security, which is what they did. And that's how they found out that John engaged a security officer about a half an hour into his walk. They interviewed the security officer. He said, well, we know John. He taught here for years. It's like talking to an old friend. He was great. Just asked how I was doing. Everything was good. Absolutely nothing abnormal. Not what you want to hear. Well, a couple days after that, they ended up finding a jogger in the neighborhood after he saw the publicity. He confirmed the exact same thing that the security officer said. Nothing abnormal. He seemed in great spirits. Didn't seem ill. Didn't seem injured in any way. They said it was 100% normal. Well, after they made those phone calls, they kept calling, and they ended up getting a bloodhound from a local police department to come in. And with a series of 35 searchers that they gathered, they decided that they were going to track his scent. Well, nothing really superficially smart or enlightening came out of it. The dog tracked along Hooper to the edge of the woods right here and lost it about a mile from campus. Now, that, again, this would have been a normal way for John to either go this way and to go through and cut through, or to go this way and cut through. The belief is that he went across campus here, talked to the security guard, cut through the woods, came back. Well, in this area is where they lost the scent trail. Not that unusual, not that enlightening, but a data point. They covered 20 acres that day, they thought, with the dog. They had nothing. Well, the police kept working at this. And at 5 o'clock, they had 2 Army National Guard helicopters that were searching over this area. They saw nothing unusual. And what would they be looking for? They'd just be looking for a man laying on the ground, probably. At 8:30 p.m., search and rescue for August 7th ended. Now here's what happens. You got an urban police department probably not used to doing search and rescue. And they just have missing persons at this point. I'm sure that they felt that there was a 99% chance that John was going to be found within a couple days. He was old. He had arthritis. He used the walking to inhibit the arthritis hurting him more. I understand this. Got a lot of friends that are older that have arthritis that still try to run, work out, minimize the effects of it. Now, that's what John was trying to do. Now, about his family, Estelle and his boys, the report coming from the police, everyone got along super well. He loved his family. There would have been absolutely zero reason to leave. He had a wallet. He had credit cards. So right away, the police are monitoring these. See if they're stolen and they're used somewhere else. If they are used, go there and find out who used them, get a description, etc. They're on top of all this. Day after John disappears, August 8th. The search started at 8 o'clock, and they had already arranged to have the New Jersey State Police commit a helicopter for the day. And then they also had the Mercer County Sheriffs supplying another helicopter. Now they searched the areas of Silverton and Miller and Mercer creeks trying to find anything. And they searched the creeks with ground pounders. And again, they're looking for anything. Clothing, wallet, a body. They weren't finding anything. And again, everyone is completely perplexed at this point. End of the day, August 8th, end of the first full day of searching, they had nothing. August 9th, the school agreed to participate in having their area searched extensively. And we're talking buildings, rooms that aren't used much. Everything possible was searched. They found that jogger that day that engaged John in conversation. They weren't really getting anything. They weren't getting anywhere. August 10th. Canines came back on the scene. Area searched extensively. New Jersey helicopter was back in the air. Now, if you can imagine, the students at the college were just, that's Ocean City College in New Jersey. They must have been dumbfounded, because here's a man that had taught for them for 16 years, all of a sudden missing, and now the school's like a war zone. Helicopters overhead, police everywhere. Estelle was quite disturbed, along with her boys. Now, Estelle had worked for public utilities in Delaware for many years. She called them, explained that John had disappeared. They told her, do not worry, you stay home, take care of your boys, answer questions, just stay there. And she was going to anyway, but she had support. On August 10th, after the canines were brought back, and they had cadaver dogs there too, nothing. The police met with the family and explained, we've searched areas 3 and 4 times already. We've gone over creek beds. We've searched the one pond. We've gone to every room on the college campus. We've searched the neighborhoods and the backyards of every home within 3 blocks. We can't find anything. Now at this point, they're going to, if you were the victim, if you were Estelle, they would say, do you have any ideas where else we could search? And if you were a smart 411 follower, you'd say, well, many times people are found in an area that had been previously searched 4 and 5 times. Yeah, they would probably not believe you, but it's the facts. And then they would have said, well, if there's no other areas that we can search, then I think we're done. And that's exactly where they headed. He was last seen wearing navy blue shorts, white tennis shoes, and a white tennis top. He could walk. He walked well. And the one thing about this story that I thought about the whole time is that the police and Estelle said many times that John was a man of routine. Every day he did the same thing. He walked in a different direction. He walked a different route. But every morning he walked. And that's one thing when you're an investigator that you think about. And here's why. Because if somebody wanted to do harm to John, or even someone wanted to abduct John, it would have been pretty easy. Just do surveillance on his house for a week, and you notice that every morning about 8:45 he leaves and walks the same route on a hike. So I kept that in the back of my mind the entire time I was doing the investigation on this. So August 17th, everything was rechecked a second time. The next time you heard anything from the police was August 30th. The head of detectives was a man named Lieutenant Fred Bear. This is his words. This disappearance, quote, it's completely baffling, end of quotes. He then went on to say he just walked over to school. He's known the school for 16 years. This man did not get lost. And if he happened to wander and get tired and fell and got hurt, we searched that area completely around the school many, many, many times and found nothing. When I say it's completely baffling, it's baffling. Well, that was on August 30th. September 24th. Police are disturbed by this, and they decide to do one more search. They get the university to send college students, professors, all employees, neighbors of John's, and fire and police personnel, and they have 6 teams of people, and they split those 6 teams amongst 275 acres. They wanted every inch of the ground looked at. Well, they spent 10 hours sending a team over one area. Then this team goes and checks the area that the other team had searched, and they just keep rotating around. They found nothing. again, I always think this way. What about Estelle and her boys? What can they think? Dad goes for a walk every day. He goes for a walk and now he disappears. Yeah. What do you think? And you're still living in the house that he walked out of. So somewhere in the area where you live, something either really unusual happened, or the patriarch of the family is deceased. Next note on this case was August 5th, 1984. Yeah, almost exactly a year after John disappeared. Police stated that they had been monitoring John's bank accounts and credit cards, and none had showed any activity. At about this time, they said, this was a month earlier, a psychic called the police and stated that John had died in a red brick building where the roof caved in, somewhere near Allaire Park in Monmouth County. That's a pretty specific description. How many red brick buildings with roofs caved in can there be? And even if there were 20, how long does it take you to search a building like that? An hour? With a dog, even less. Well, Lieutenant Bear calls over to Monmouth County, explains what they have, and if they have any locations like they described. They said, yeah, there's one building like that. Well, they went over to the site, and the sheriff and the police and a couple canines went in, searched the entire building, found nothing. I wouldn't call myself frustrated if I was the police right then, but I would call myself concerned. Then you fast forward 2 more years, 1986. The police stated that they are at a dead end. They got nothing. Estelle was still working for the public utilities in Delaware. Police didn't have anywhere to turn. No ideas. I would not know what to do at this point. To me, it sounded like they had exhausted every avenue available. I suppose the one thing I would check is the Social Security Administration to see if anybody had been claiming his Social Security now that he was retired. But John's never turned up anywhere, anyhow, no clothes. No other relatives have heard from him. And in a fairly urban setting like Tom's River, where can you hide a body and never be found? Plus, if somebody took John, why? An old man with arthritis who's brilliant, why? Well, as I'm doing the investigation on this case, if you have read my 411 books, you do know that there are many older men who have disappeared under circumstances that don't make any sense, like John's. For reasons that don't make any sense. He loved his wife, loved his family, no reason to leave. Yet they completely vanished. How is that possible? And why? Well, briefly, let me go over a couple of these. There was a case I've talked about many times in Ohio where a young man was just getting ready to graduate from medical school, and he was at a bar, an upstairs bar. And there's cameras on that all the time. And everyone, 20 people reported him being up in that bar. Nobody could find any footage of him coming down the escalator from the bar. In fact, the detective handling that case made comments in the years afterwards that he had seen people at concerts and things, and he had ran 100 yards to catch somebody thinking it was this man because he had the identity imprinted on his mind. That guy was never found. Another case. A man very similar in age to John, who was working, and when his house was near a river, like on the side of the riverbank, and he left his home, headed to work, was going to walk outside. A friend of his picks him up as he's waiting on the street every morning, makes a walk from the front door to the street. His friend stops, he's not there, he drives on, calls later on, figures out, yeah, he walked out the door to meet you. Giant search. Never found. Another case. This one is at a national park. This person won a Bronze Star, was given a Bronze Star for military action, spoke 6 languages, was a director in a Washington state retirement system. And people saw him walking down a trail in flip-flops at Olympic National Park, and he disappeared. I probably got 1,000 emails from people who read that story and said, Dave, that sounds like that man was knowing he was going to get picked up and taken. Because nobody walks that trail like that. Plus, he didn't bring a backpack. He didn't bring anything. But the one thing about each one of these men that I described to you, they fit a profile. That profile being, number one, they were considered brilliant, super smart men. And even more than their brilliance, this is like a personality point that's just so obvious. Everybody liked these guys a lot. They were friendly, they got along with people, they cared about people. And it just, each time you read it, it just hits you in the face that that's definitely what these men were. So where'd they go? Last one. There was a student years ago, 40 years ago, that was going to Miami, Ohio, where Ben went to school. This is actually how we got onto this story. Some people at the school knew who I was and said, you know, we had a disappearance here a long time ago, Dave. You ought to look into it. I went into the director, or the president of the school's office, and they had this file about that thick. I spent like 3 days. One time I came out to see Ben, and he was in school. So during the day, I just kept going through the file. Student, athlete, and he played a musical instrument. Everybody liked him. One day, he disappears. There were rumors that he might have been knocking on doors a couple miles away from campus. It was all rumors. That student was never found. And then, a couple months afterwards, a student who knew this student was in far northern Pennsylvania, taking a trip into New York, stopped into a little tiny restaurant. And him and his girlfriend were sitting there, and he kept making eye contact with this other man at the table, who was the student, apparently, or that was the thinking. And he was with another student-aged man and an older man. And he said, I almost got up to say, hey, how you doing? And I went to the bathroom, and I came back, and I was going to go do it, and all 3 of them were gone. He goes, I ran out to the parking lot, they were gone. And he goes, to this day, I still think it was him. So where are these people going? How are they being used? Is it our government? I don't know. But let me tell you, John Warren disappeared August 7th, 1983. Not one shred of evidence has been discovered about where he went. And I can tell you that his sons and his wife had the rest of their lives permanently altered because of this. And that's very hard on life. This sincerely thank you for being here. Please share this story on your social media. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. I've had a lot of people say, hey, I try to give you a thumbs up and I can't. It won't let me. Also, make sure you're subscribed and you're getting your notifications. If you're not subscribed, send me a note here on this video. And please read the comments on the video. People like comment, but they don't read what others are saying. You got to read it because it's an educational tool for sure. Anyhow, be nice to each other. It's the kindness revolution. Kindness costs you nothing. Paulides out.